All right, let's jump into another deep dive. Today, we're taking a look at neuromarketing using Roger Dooley's Brainfluence.
Sounds intriguing.
You wanted to know more about it, so get ready to explore how your brain makes buying decisions and how marketers use that to, well, their advantage. We'll uncover how pricing, product design, even the words they use can really sway you. Prepare for some aha moments.
Yeah, it's really amazing how much happens behind the scenes, when we think we're being all logical. Let's start with buying pain, something Dooley talks about.
Buying pain. Okay. Sounds kind of ominous.
Right.
Not talking about paper cuts and price tags, are we?
No, no, not quite. Buying pain is that negative feeling that your brain gets when you spend money. You know, that hesitation before you hit buy now?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
That's your brain weighing the joy of the product against the pain of, well, handing over your cash.
Oh, yeah, I know that feeling all too well.
Yeah.
So how do marketers try to make that pain go away so we buy?
Well, researchers from Carnegie Mellon and Stanford, they actually watched people's brains in those fMRI machines while they shopped.
Oh, wow.
They found that when people saw overpriced stuff, the pain center in their brain, it lit up.
No way.
Yeah. This pain is also linked to our sense of value and fairness. That's why good marketers, they'll use things like discounts or make it seem like you have to buy now to make the purchase feel better, more rewarding.
So a good deal basically tricks our brains into feeling less pain,
Hmm.
makes us more likely to spend.
Exactly. It's all about how we see value. Now, ever notice how stores put their priciest items right up front?
I mean, I've seen it, but never really thought about
It's anchor pricing at work.
anchor pricing.
Yeah. It's a subtle way to play with our sense of value. See, the first price, the anchor, it sets a standard in our minds. So then when we see a lower price, even if it's still high, it feels like a bargain. Apple, for instance, they started the iPhone super high, set that anchor for a premium product, and then over time, they lowered it bit by bit, making each drop look like a steal.
Wow, that's pretty smart. But what about the opposite? Sometimes I get so overwhelmed by too many choices. Could that be a tactic too?
Oh, absolutely. It seems counterintuitive, but too many choices can actually backfire. It's called choice fatigue, and it can kill sales. Our brains basically get tired of deciding.
So less is more then.
Exactly. There's this classic study with jam.
Jam.
Yeah, they had two displays, one with 6 flavors, one with 24. Now, the bigger one, it got more attention, but people were 10 times more likely to buy from the smaller one.
10 times. Wow. Okay, so limiting choices, that's a big takeaway for marketers, right?
Huge! By simplifying things, they make it easier for us to say yes. Think about those carefully curated restaurant menus or online stores with personalized recommendations.
It's like they're like decluttering our brains to get us to buy.
Speaking of, can we talk about something a little more, well, fun, like how our senses affect what we buy? Ah, sensory marketing. Our senses, they have a massive influence, often without us even knowing. Remember that click an espresso machine makes?
You mean the one that makes me feel like a barista even though I can barely make toast?
Exactly. Nespresso actually engineered that sound to make you think of high-quality coffee, a premium experience.
Wow.
It's about appealing to that emotional subconscious part of our brain that drives decisions.
So they're selling an experience, not just coffee.
Right. And it's not just sound. The weight of a product can make it seem more valuable. A nice aroma can keep you in a store longer. It's all very calculated.
Wow, a multi-sensory symphony to guide our wallets.
Precisely. And they're getting more and more sophisticated with it. But, it's not always about trickery. It's also about making things enjoyable, memorable.
Right, right. Okay, so senses, powerful tool. But what about something a little less tangible? Our feelings.
Ah, yes. Emotions, they play a huge role, especially when it comes to brands. We all have our favorites.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But what makes me choose one brand over another, even if they're basically the same? What's happening in my brain?
There's research that shows how brands can, hijack our emotions, even override our senses. Remember the Pepsi challenge?
Yeah.
In blind taste tests, people often like Pepsi more. But if they knew what they were drinking, Coke won every time.
So knowing the brand changed how things tasted.
It did. Strong brands, they light up the parts of our brain that deal with reward, identity, belonging. We connect with brands that match our values or dreams, and those connections, they can be stronger than our senses.
So like the brand becomes part of who we are. Like the clothes we wear, the car we drive, it says something about us.
Exactly. Think about Apple's I'm a Mac campaign. It wasn't about features, it was about being part of a certain group. That's why we stick to brands, even if there are cheaper, maybe better options. We're buying into an identity.
That's deep. So how do they tap into that? Flashy ads.
Ads play a part, yeah. But it's also the whole experience, how a company treats its customers, its values, the stories it tells. It all builds that emotional connection.
Wow. So much more to it than we realize. Speaking of going deeper, I'm curious about print. Does it does it still hold up in today's digital world? Like, can it still affect our brains?
You might be surprised, print media, especially when it comes to memory and how we see things, it still has a unique power.
Really? I would thought, with all the screens and everything, that print was like going extinct.
While it's true digital media has exploded, research shows that our brains process information differently on paper. It seems like actually holding a book or magazine, that tactile experience, it engages different parts of the brain, leads to deeper processing.
So something about physically touching print, it makes it stick.
Precisely. One study found that vivid images in print ads, they could actually create false memories of having tried a product. People saw ads for popcorn and later swore they'd eaten it, even though they hadn't.
Wait, false memories from just an ad? That's kind of creepy, but also powerful.
It is. Shows how important strong visuals in print are. And don't underestimate touch. Holding a nice brochure, a catalog, it can be way more engaging than scrolling a website.
Okay, starting to see how print can still be effective. But what about those more direct techniques? The psychological tricks marketers use to get us to say yes?
Oh, they definitely exist. And they come straight from psychology and behavioral economics. Three of the most powerful: reciprocity, scarcity, and social proof.
Okay, break those down for me. Reciprocity, what's that all about?
Reciprocity is basically human nature. When someone does something nice, we feel like we got to do something nice back. Marketers use this with free samples, gifts, or even just super good customer service.
That's why I feel obligated to buy after getting a free sample. Like,
Yeah.
I owe them.
Exactly. It's hardwired into us. And speaking of wiring, scarcity taps into our fear of missing out.
Like those limited time offer deals. The ones that make you feel like if you don't buy now, you'll regret it forever.
You got it. By creating that urgency, that feeling of exclusivity, they can make us act without thinking, even if we didn't want the thing before.
They're playing on our FOMO. Clever.
Huh.
What about social proof?
Social proof is all about how we look to others for guidance, especially when we're unsure. We trust something more if we see other people happy with it.
So that's why online reviews and testimonials work so well. Makes sense. We're social creatures. We care what others think.
Exactly. Marketers know this, so they highlight positive reviews, celebrity endorsements, even just how many people bought something. Makes us feel better about buying it ourselves.
Like a virtual crowd nudging us along.
Wow.
So many psychological levers they can pull.
It's incredible, right? But the more we know, the better we can make informed choices. Now, have you ever noticed how even small wording changes can affect how you see a product?
You mean like the difference between buy now and add to cart?
That's a perfect example. Even tiny wording tweaks can change everything. There's a whole science to it, psycholinguistics.
Psycholinguistics. Okay, that sounds serious. What have they found out?
Well, one study found that people thought a workout was shorter and were more likely to do it if the instructions were printed in an easy-to-read font.
Seriously. So if I want to trick myself into exercising, print my workout plan in, like Comic Sans.
Well, not that simple, but it shows how even subtle things can change our behavior. And it's not just fonts. Adding "you can trust us" to an ad for a car repair shop actually made people trust them more.
Wow. Just by saying it.
Just by saying it, words are powerful. By tapping into those subconscious associations, emotions, marketers can shape how we see things, guide our choices. That's why understanding the psychology of language is so important in marketing.
Okay, mind blown. We've covered buying pain, the power of words, so much. What else does Dooley talk about in Brainfluence?
Well, we've talked about logic and emotion, but there's another powerful tool marketers use: storytelling.
Oh, storytelling. Everyone loves a good story. How does that fit into marketing?
Think about it. We've been telling stories forever. It's how we understand the world, connect with each other, remember things. Stories, they engage our brains way more than just facts and figures.
So it's not just about information, it's about creating an experience.
Yes, stories trigger emotions, fire up our imaginations, create connection. They transport us, let us experience things.
So by telling a good story, brands can connect with our audience on a deeper level.
Absolutely. Like that Google Super Bowl ad, Parisian Love. It told a beautiful love story using just search queries, showed what their product could do without even saying a word.
Oh, I remember that ad. It was so simple, but it worked.
Exactly. That's the magic of storytelling. It can go beyond language, beyond culture. It creates a universal connection. Done right, it can be the most persuasive type of marketing there is.
Wow. It's way
Super.
more than just entertainment.
Yeah.
But how do marketers actually, like, craft these stories? Is there a secret formula?
No one-size-fits-all formula, but there are things that make stories grip us. Conflict, for one. We're drawn to challenges, struggles, stories with resolution.
Like that classic hero's journey,
Hmm.
facing obstacles, coming out, changed.
Exactly. Another thing is emotion. A good story should make you feel something, whether it's joy, sadness, anger, fear, whatever.
So it's not just about what they tell us, but how they make us feel.
Exactly. And when you combine a good story with a strong emotion, you create something memorable, something that sticks.
This is fascinating. I'm starting to see how storytelling can be used everywhere in marketing.
It can. It's a whole other layer of strategy.
Wow. This deep dive has been incredible. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of, well, my own brain
Hmm.
and how marketers, use that knowledge to get to us.
It's been great guiding you through this world, but we've only scratched the surface. There's so much more to neuromarketing.
Oh, wow. I'm ready to go even deeper. What else is there?
Well, in our next segment, we'll explore sensory marketing even more. We'll look at how things like touch, smell, even the sounds in a store can make us spend more.
Ooh, that sounds interesting. Can't wait to find out how my senses are secretly controlling my shopping cart.
Get ready for more aha moments. We'll uncover how marketers use our senses to shape how we see things and ultimately how we choose.
I'm all ears. Until then, listeners, pay attention to what your brain does next time you see a clever ad or a shiny new product. You might surprise yourself.
Welcome back. So, like we promised, let's get into sensory marketing, really dive in. We were talking about that Nespresso click, but there's so much more. Did you know even the weight of something can make a difference?
Wait, really? Like if something's heavier, we think it's worth more? I've definitely fallen for that. Bigger is better and all that.
There's actually research on that. They gave people the same resumes, but on different clipboards, some light, some heavy.
Oh, wait.
And guess what? They thought the people in the heavier clipboards were more serious, more qualified.
Wow, that's wild. So even just touch can change our minds.
Absolutely. It shows how our brains are always taking in information and little things we don't even notice, can affect us. It's about making those good subconscious connections.
Makes you realize how much you miss, just going through life.
We all do. It's about understanding how our brains work and how marketers use that, those instincts we have. But okay, let's move on to smell. Can a good smell really make people buy more?
I mean, I've totally been sucked in by the smell of fresh bread or, those fancy candles at the store.
Right.
But is there, like, science behind that?
There is smell. It goes straight to the emotional part of our brain, the amygdala.
Fancy word.
So a nice smell can trigger good feelings, memories, makes us want to stay in a store, maybe buy something.
So those stores pumping out the smell of cinnamon rolls, they're not just trying to make us hungry, they're trying to, like, make us happy.
Exactly. And it's not just food. Stores use scents to create certain moods associations. Like think of lavender in a spa or that fresh smell in a hotel lobby.
Yeah, I get it. It's about setting the mood, making you connect those good feelings with the brand.
Exactly. Scent can be really effective for, say, luxury goods, food, anything that's a sensory experience.
Yeah.
But you got to be careful. Too much of a good smell can be a bad thing.
Yeah, like when someone wears way too much perfume, it's like,
All
whoa.
right. Too much. It's got to be a scent. People will be like, and it's got to fit the brand.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go from smell to sound. We talked about the Nespresso click, but there are tons of ways sound affects us.
Like those jingles that get stuck in your head forever.
Yeah.
Is there a reason those work so well?
There is. Our brains love new things, patterns, a catchy tune or a weird sound. It grabs our attention, creates a memory, like those Intel chimes or that THX sound in movies.
Oh, yeah, you hear those, you know exactly what they are.
Right. Sound can build brand recognition and bring up specific emotions. Think about the sound a Harley Davidson makes. Instantly recognizable, right?
Yeah.
And it makes you think of power, freedom.
It's true, it's true. What about those sounds we don't even notice, like subliminal messaging? Is that a real thing?
Subliminal messaging, that's an interesting one, but kind of controversial. There's no proof that we can be, like, brainwashed by messages we don't hear. But there is some research that suggests even things we don't fully process, they can still affect us somehow.
So even if we don't realize we're hearing or seeing something, it might still be getting in.
Exactly. That's why you see things like product placement or ads kind of blended into the environment. They're trying to reach us even when we're not paying attention.
Sneaky. But is that, is it ethical? Feels a little manipulative.
It's a good question. Marketers need to use these things responsibly, but you could also say it's about making things more immersive, more engaging for the consumer, as long as it's done openly, and respects their choices.
Yeah, it's a fine line, I guess, between persuasion and tricking people.
For sure. Speaking of persuasion, Dooley talks about some specific techniques that can make us more likely to say yes to something. One of the strongest is reciprocity.
Oh, reciprocity,
Yeah.
right. We talked about that. Like when you get a gift, you kind of feel like you have to give back.
Right. It's how we're wired, and marketers use it. Think of free samples or free trials for websites.
So it's not just them being nice, it's them trying to make us feel obligated.
Often, yeah. It's a way to get us hooked. Another powerful one is scarcity.
Scarcity, like when they say limited time offer or selling out fast.
Exactly. Plays on that fear of missing out. That feeling of, gotta get it now, can lead to a lot of impulse buys.
I've definitely been there.
Yeah.
You see only two left, and suddenly you have to have it, even if you weren't that interested before.
Classic tactic. And it often goes hand in hand with social proof, showing you how many other people bought the thing or are looking at it right now, creating that buzz.
It's like they're like manufacturing a trend, making you feel like you got to be part of it.
Exactly. And it works.
Okay, so online stores, they're using all these things to get to us. Can we do anything about it?
We can. As always, knowledge is power. Once you know the game, you can play it better.
Okay, I want to play it better. What else can we do?
One thing, make a budget and stick to it, even online.
Easier said than done, right?
I know. But even having a general idea of what you can spend can help fight that urge to click add to cart. You can also unsubscribe from those emails that are always tempting you with sales.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Right. And if you do find yourself wanting something, that must-have pair of shoes or that cool gadget, give yourself 24 hours before you buy.
So sleep on it. Good advice.
It is. Impulse buys, they're all about emotion. And those emotions, they can fade. Give yourself time to think it through.
Okay, I'm going to try that. But I'm also curious about how all this neuromarketing stuff applies to other decisions, not just shopping. We make choices all the time, big and small.
That's a great point. These principles, they apply to way more than just buying stuff. One big one is loss aversion. It's basically how our brains are wired to avoid losing things.
Loss aversion. Okay, I'm listening.
It means we feel the pain of losing something way more strongly than the joy of gaining the same thing. So we do more to avoid losing $10 than we do to win $10.
So we're more afraid of losing money than excited about finding it. That doesn't seem very logical.
I know, right? But it's a big part of why we make the choices we do. And sometimes it makes us do things that don't really make sense.
Like, give me an example. How does loss aversion mess us up?
Think about investing. People hate selling a stock that's losing money, even if that's the smart thing to do.
Oh, yeah. Hold on, hoping it'll go back up, even though it's probably going to keep going down. So focused on not losing that they end up risking even more.
Exactly. They get attached to that losing stock, and the fear of that loss takes over.
Fear takes the wheel.
Hmm.
So how do we fight that loss aversion and make smarter choices?
One way is to reframe things. Don't focus on what you might lose. Focus on what you might gain by doing something different.
So perspective, again, seeing things differently.
Exactly. Another way, try to detach yourself a little bit. Take the emotion out of it. Hard to do, but if you can be more objective, you won't be so swayed by those fears.
Right. Easier said than done, though, right? We're human. We have feelings.
Of course we do. And feelings, they matter when making choices. They tell us what's important to us.
So it's not about ignoring them. It's about understanding them and using them to our advantage, like a balance, head and heart.
Exactly. Someone who makes good decisions, they can balance how they feel with logic, with reason, takes practice, and knowing yourself.
This is so helpful. We've talked about loss aversion, framing, feelings, any other neuromarketing stuff that can help us with everyday choices.
Well, there's another interesting thing with a lot of uses called priming.
Priming. Remind me what that is.
Priming is the idea that, well, seeing or hearing certain things can affect what we think and do afterward, even if we don't realize it's connected. Our brains are always making links, building these webs of thoughts and feelings.
Okay. So how does priming work in real life?
There was this study where they showed people words about old age, things like wrinkle and Florida. Afterward, these people actually walked slower down the hall.
No way. Just from thinking about old age.
It's true. Shows how powerful these subtle influences can be. Our brains are like sponges, always taking stuff in, even if we don't know it.
And marketers know how to use that.
Right. Oh, yeah. They're pros at it. They pick the right images, words, even smells to create a certain feeling, hoping it'll make us choose their product.
So like a website with pictures of happy, successful people, they're hoping we'll connect those good feelings with their brand.
Exactly. Or a clothing store playing upbeat music to get you energized, ready to spend.
Makes sense? Priming is everywhere then.
It is, and it can be used for good or bad.
Okay, I'm going to be watching out for that. But what about using these ideas to help people, not just sell them things?
Good question. Neuromarketing can be used for a lot of good things, like public health campaigns.
Oh, you mean using these techniques to get people to be healthier?
Yeah, like choosing the salad instead of the burger, taking the stairs. They might use framing, focusing on how good exercise makes you feel instead of the bad stuff that happens if you don't, can be more motivating for some people.
That's smart. What else?
They can also use it for fundraising. By understanding how people make choices about giving, they can make appeals that really connect with people, make them want to give more.
So instead of just showing statistics, they can tell a story about someone whose life was changed by the charity.
Exactly. Storytelling, it creates an emotional connection, and that makes people want to help. They can also use scarcity, saying how urgently the donations are needed, to help people in a crisis.
It's amazing how these same ideas can be used in so many different ways,
Yeah.
to actually make a difference.
It is. It all comes back to understanding how our brains work. But as we finish up talking about priming, there's a question you're probably thinking about. If marketers know all this about our brains, how can we stop them from manipulating us?
Yeah, that's a big one.
Mm.
I mean, it's kind of scary knowing how easily we can be influenced. Do we even have any free will left?
Of course we do. We're not robots. Our brains might have these weaknesses, these subconscious things going on, but we can still make our own choices. And we can definitely get better at resisting those manipulative tricks.
Okay, good. Give me the secrets. How do we take back control?
One thing, pay attention to your emotions. How do you feel when you see those ads or when you're about to buy something? If you're stressed, anxious, maybe even just a little down, you're more likely to fall for those persuasive messages.
So if I'm feeling kind of vulnerable, step away from the shopping cart.
Exactly. Take a breath, step back, and try to think clearly. Another thing, be a little skeptical. If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah, good old common sense.
Right? Don't let the fancy marketing or a smooth salesperson make the decision for you. Do your research, read reviews, compare prices.
Be a smart shopper. Any other tips for resisting?
You can also try to see fewer of those persuasive messages. Unsubscribe from email lists. Unfollow those accounts that are always trying to sell you stuff. Even be careful about what websites you visit. You can make your mental space a lot calmer, less manipulative.
So take control of what you see, what you let into your head. Create a mental filter.
Exactly. And set limits on your spending. Make a budget, stick to it. Make a list before you shop, and no impulse buys.
All good advice. It's about being proactive, making our own decisions instead of letting other people make them for us.
Yes. And the more you understand how your brain works and the tricks marketers use, the better you'll be at resisting those tricks and making choices that are good for you.
This has been awesome. I feel like I have a whole new toolkit for dealing with marketing and making decisions.
Glad to hear it. But we're not done yet. In our last segment, we'll talk about how to use these principles to improve our relationships with other people, things like building trust and communicating better.
Wow, can't wait. This deep dive is showing that neuromarketing isn't just about selling stuff, it's about understanding people. Until next time, listeners, keep those brains working and keep learning. Welcome back for our final dive into neuromarketing. We've covered so much from the power of our senses to all those tricks marketers use to, tap into our brains and influence us. Now, I'm really interested in how these ideas can be used for something more personal, relationships.
Yeah, it's interesting how these concepts go way beyond just buying and selling. I mean, we're always dealing with people, right? Trying to build those connections. And a lot of what we've talked about can help us understand that, make those relationships better.
Okay, I'm all ears. Where do we even start?
Let's start with trust.
Yeah.
It's the foundation of any good relationship, right? You're more likely to trust someone with your business, with your feelings, with, just about anything. But trust doesn't just happen. You got to build it.
So how do we do that using neuromarketing? Are there brain hacks for trust?
No magic hacks, but understanding how our brains see trustworthiness can definitely help. One big thing is honesty, being transparent. Our brains, they're really good at picking up on inconsistencies. When someone's not being straight with us.
Yeah, like that feeling that something's off,
Yeah.
and if you don't feel like you can trust someone, you're not going to let them in.
Right. You got to be open and honest to build that trust. Another thing is consistency, being reliable. Our brains, they like predictability. When someone does what they say they'll do over and over, our brains start to trust them.
So it's like they become this safe space in a world that's, kind of crazy and unpredictable.
Exactly. Consistency builds trust. It shows you can depend on that person. And it's not about big things, it's about showing up for those small moments.
So it's not about being perfect, it's about being there. I like that. What else can neuromarketing teach us about relationships?
Well, we've talked about communication, but words are only part of it. Nonverbal stuff, that's huge. Our brains pick up on all those little cues, body language, facial expressions, tone of voice.
So even if you're saying the right things, you might be saying something else with your body.
Exactly. We communicate so much without realizing it. Like if you're crossing your arms or not making eye contact, the other person might think you're not interested, even if you are.
Oh yeah, I do that sometimes. Cross my arms just because I'm comfy. Didn't realize it could send the wrong message.
It happens. It's just about being aware, making sure your body's saying what you want it to say.
Hmm.
If you want to connect with someone, you got to show it, be open, warm, engaged.
So it's like speaking the language of trust, but with your whole body, not just words.
Yes. And another powerful tool is empathy.
Empathy. That's about understanding how someone else feels, right?
Mhm.
Putting yourself in their shoes.
Exactly. It's crucial for any good relationship.
Yeah, I get that. When someone really gets you, it creates this connection. But how do you get more empathetic? Is that something you're born with, or can you learn it?
Some people are naturally more empathetic, but it's definitely a skill you can practice. Just listening, really listening, that's huge. Focus on what they're saying, don't interrupt, don't judge.
So put your own stuff aside and just be there with them.
Yes, and ask questions, to really get where they're coming from. Show them you care about understanding your experience.
Instead of just waiting to talk, try to understand how they feel.
Exactly. When you do that, you create a safe space for real connection, real understanding.
It makes me think about how people talk about building walls when they're hurt. Empathy is like the opposite, building bridges.
I like that. And those bridges, they're what make relationships strong,
Yeah.
able to handle the tough stuff.
Okay, so trust, nonverbal cues, empathy. Any other neuromarketing secrets for relationships?
Well, remember reciprocity, how we talked about it with marketing. It's just as important in our personal lives.
You mean wanting to do something nice back when someone's nice to us?
Right. It's built into us, helps keep things balanced, and we can use it to make relationships stronger.
So don't just wait for someone to be nice. Take the initiative. Be kind. Be generous.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be a big thing, just a compliment, a small favor, listening when they need to talk. Those little things add up.
Yeah, they do.
And when we're kind, it often makes the other person want to be kind. It's a good cycle, Makes the bond stronger.
Like what goes around comes around.
Exactly. And this works for all kinds of relationships, romantic, friends, family, even at work.
This is amazing. It's like
Like,
understanding neuromarketing can make you a better shopper and a better person too.
that's the thing. It's not just about selling stuff. It's about understanding people. But before we wrap up, we got to talk about the ethics of all this.
Yeah, good point. We've talked about how marketers use these techniques to get us to do things. Some of it feels kind of sneaky. Are there rules for how to use neuromarketing ethically?
Definitely. It's a super important topic. It's great to understand how our brains work, but you got to use that knowledge the right way. One big thing is transparency. People should know when these techniques are being used, how it might be affecting them.
So no secret mind control stuff.
Right. You also have to respect people's freedom to choose. No pressure, no manipulation.
So help people make informed choices, not trick them into buying stuff they don't need.
Exactly. And be extra careful with people who are vulnerable, like kids, or people who have trouble thinking clearly. They're more likely to be influenced.
Yeah, we got to look out for them. It's about using this knowledge to do good, not to take advantage of people.
Exactly. It's about making things better for everyone, consumers and businesses. Ethical neuromarketing, it can make campaigns more effective, more engaging, while still respecting people's choices, their dignity.
This has been such an eye-opener. I feel like I understand my own brain better, and I see all the ethical stuff in a new light.
Great. Knowledge is power, right? The more we know about how our brains work, the better choices we can make. Choices that make us happier, healthier, more fulfilled.
I love that. Thank you so much for this amazing deep dive into neuromarketing. It's clearly not just about advertising. It's a whole new way to look at people, relationships, and how we make choices every day. Until next time, everyone, stay curious.